You may have heard of St. James Way or the Way of St. James. What is it exactly? And why do people do it? Is it only for religious people? On today's podcast, we talk about the Way and explain what it is and why you might want to do it. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hi, I'm Reza.
And my name's Craig.
And with more than 50 years of teaching between us, we'll help you improve your English and take it to the next level. So, my friend, how are you? How are things?
Things are very well, thank you, Reza. I've been very busy with the conversation courses that started recently, and I want to say hello to everyone who is in the groups online. And there will also be more courses starting before the end of the year, so they're going very well and everything's good. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm fine, a bit busy. It's correction time of the year. So classes started in October, so it's early November now when we're recording this. So the first corrections are coming in. So I'm remembering what it is to give up your Saturday night and Sunday night to corrections.
Oh, the life of a hard-working teacher. I remember that. So if you're a new listener to the podcast, you're very, very welcome. And if you've come back to listen again, thank you. We're starting this week with a voice message we've received from Miriam from Turkey, who has made some comments on a recent episode we did when we spoke about the uses of used to, get used to, be used to, etc.
Hi, I am Miriam from Turkey, who used to live in Turkey but currently live in Germany. After I listened to your last podcast, I realized how much verb used to you used, which helped me a lot to understand the difference between them. And I decided to make a sentence to use used to as much as I can. Here's what I got. I usually use some apps and listen to podcasts to get used to some vocabulary and grammar that I wasn't used to know before. Now that I am used to them, I can use them in a sentence in a daily conversation. Thanks to you guys. You're providing us really great tool to improve our English and good opportunity to listen to a lovely podcast and having good time while listening to your friendly conversation. Bye.
Well, thank you, Miriam. And there's nothing that Reza and I enjoy more than getting voice messages from listeners practicing what we've been talking about and teaching. And we really loved your message using used to in different forms, and especially your pronunciation. Wasn't her pronunciation lovely, Reza?
Very, very good pronunciation, Miriam. Yeah, really good. I couldn't find any fault in your pronunciation at all. And by the way, you've got me reminiscing, thinking about the past. You say you used to live in Turkey, but now you live in Germany. Sounds odd to hear it, but me too.
How long have you been living in Germany?
Well, I don't live in Germany now, but I did go. Well, I didn't explain that very well, did I? No, I used to live in Turkey and I used to live in Germany, but I went from Turkey to Germany. So that's what I should have said. I know, Miriam, you're thinking, hold on, there's something I'm not understanding correctly here. No, you are understanding everything I say. I lived in Ankara, my very first teaching job, and I went directly from Ankara to Berlin to live. So I did go from Turkey to Germany to live, and it was most bizarre. Maybe the same thing happened to you. I got to Germany, didn't speak any German, but I knew a few words of Turkish, not many. So I spent all my time going to kebab places and things like that because I could communicate a little bit with people saying things like, Bir tane döner yutlu, lütfen, things like that.
What does that mean?
Oh, I've impressed you there, haven't I?
Yes.
Bir tane döner yutlu, lütfen. One ration of döner yutlu.
One portion?
Yeah.
One portion of kebab.
Of kebab. Yeah, please. Because I could say that in Turkish, but I couldn't say anything in German. So I found myself going to where all the Turks were because I could speak to them a bit until I learned to speak a little bit of German, ein bisschen, but not much. So I went from Turkey to Germany myself a long time ago. That was in the last millennium, Miriam.
Well, Miriam was talking about a podcast that we did with Used To, Get Used To, Be Used To. That was podcast number 489. So if anybody would like to brush up, which means revise, improve, go to inglespodcast.com/489 or search for episode 489 on your podcast app of choice. What do you think of her sentence, Reza? It did sound good to me, except one small thing. Did you notice?
Which sentence was that?
She said, get used to some vocabulary and grammar that I wasn't used to know before. I think we can improve that, can't we?
The bit I wasn't used to know before.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miriam, that's true. You should say there that I didn't used to know before. Simply treat use as a normal verb. So if it's negative in the past, put didn't and the infinitive. Didn't used to know. It's as simple as that.
So it should be to get used to some vocabulary and grammar that I didn't used to know before. And I noticed one other small thing that we can improve. You said you're providing us a great tool to improve our English. We need a preposition in there, Miriam. We need to say you're providing us with a great tool to improve our English. So you provide someone with something. And thank you very much for your message and your compliment. Now, before we go on to speak about St. James's Way, El Camino de Santiago, we'd like to mention that if you're interested in studying with us, you can do that because Reza and I are offering 2 separate services that will both help you to improve your English. Now, if you want to improve your conversation, you can join my conversation classes, and they focus on fluency, speaking, pronunciation, listening, not too much grammar, not a lot of grammar, but mainly how to speak more effectively and with confidence. If you'd like more information and you want to join the next courses, just send me an email to Craig, Craig, @inglespodcast.com, and I'll give you more information. And Reza, you're offering classes as well, but slightly different.
Yes, my focus is on one-to-one. So just one student, you, and me, rather than Craig's small groups. And what would we do in the class? Well, above all, speaking. But apart from that, whatever you like, is since there's only one student, if you need to focus on grammar, we could. If you need to focus on pronunciation, listening, whatever you want to focus on, fluency, we will. If you're interested, why not send me an email to belfastreza@gmail.com.
And now let's focus on the main topic of today's podcast, El Camino de Santiago, St. James's Way. And this is thanks to Maria Jesus from Asturias, who gave us the idea to talk about this. But what exactly is the Way of St. James, Reza, for people who haven't heard of it?
It's what you might call a network. That doesn't mean it's on internet. No, this is the old-fashioned use of the word network before internet. A network, a collection of lots of things which come together, of pilgrimage routes that all lead to the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela in Spain. I stress Santiago de Compostela, not Santiago de Chile, not that Santiago.
That would be a long way to walk.
From here, a very long
That would give you very sore feet.
You'd need to be a good swimmer as well.
You would.
So Santiago de Compostela in Galicia, Spain, where the remains, the dead body of the apostle, the disciple, the apostle, St. James the Great, are believed to be buried. St. James is said to be one of the original 12 disciples or apostles of Jesus. So obviously an extremely important person in the Christian world.
And we had that word pilgrimage. What is a pilgrim? How would you describe pilgrim? I can remember the old westerns when John Wayne used to say, "Hey, pilgrim." Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Well, what is a pilgrim? What do they do?
A pilgrim is a person who goes on a religious journey. So a journey where the destination is really important in some spiritual way. And the journey itself then is the pilgrimage. So the pilgrim is the person, and you go on a pilgrimage to a special place.
And that network that Reza mentioned before, they are a selection of routes, paths that date back or go back to medieval times, and they originate from different locations in Europe. In fact, the Way of St. James is one of the most important Christian pilgrimages in Europe.
There's more than one route, and the routes pass through different places of interest in Spain, such as Pamplona. That's a very important place. And there are other places as well, but they all have one thing in common. They all end in Santiago de Compostela. That's in the northwest of Spain.
Have you been there? Have you been to Santiago?
I have a couple of times. I haven't done the way, I haven't walked it, but I have been to Santiago. So I did find out about the way a long time ago, but I haven't been energetic enough to actually do the pilgrimage yet.
Have you ever considered it? Because I've thought about it on a couple of occasions. I've really been tempted to walk along, maybe not all of it, but certainly part of it. Have you ever considered it seriously?
I have, yes. Because I like the idea of setting yourself a target, which is quite difficult, and doing it. Yeah, fulfilling your objectives, even if it's difficult. I like that idea of, the satisfaction of doing it. I suppose that's what motivates most people to do it.
Maybe we could do it together one year. And if anybody's listening, they could meet us on the way or even walk with us. That would be nice.
Yeah, and if any of you are really strong and want to give us a piggyback.
What's that?
A piggyback is whenever you put someone up on your back so they don't walk and you do all the walking. If there's any really dedicated fan of the podcast wants to give us a piggyback, no, I'm joking. If we do it, we'll do it properly. We'll walk.
Yeah, we'll walk every step of the way. And depending on where you start from, the route varies in length. So the length is different depending on where you start from. But most of the pilgrims walk between 100 and 800 kilometers. So it's not an easy stroll, an easy walk down the road. It's quite a long way.
Well, I've walked around Santiago a little bit, and I've walked around Pamplona. Probably if you add it all up together, I might have done about 10 kilometers in each place. Does that count at all?
No, I think you're going to have to walk. I think you're going to have to walk a little bit further, Reza. The most popular route, or one of the most popular routes, is called the Camino Frances, or the French way. But there are other different routes. There's the Camino del Norte, the north route, the Camino Portugues, the Portuguese route, and more. And every route, every path offers you a unique and different experience. Now, in the show notes to this episode, which is 492, I've linked to some websites where you can see maps of these different routes that are recommended. Go to inglespodcast.com/492 and click on the links to have a look at the map of Spain and where these different routes go to.
One thing to take into account is when you might do the walk. Most people agree that the best time to walk El Camino de Santiago is probably between May and September, when the weather is mild and dry. Because Galicia gets pretty cold and wet and windy in the winter, so May to September is the best time. But bear in mind, it gets really busy around Easter time.
That makes sense because of the religious significance of Easter. And you said May and September, between May and September. I'm more than happy to consider doing it and doing it with you, but don't ask me to do it in August and July, even though August and July fall in that period, because I just think it will be too hot during the day. What do you reckon?
It probably would, though not as hot as Valencia. I mean, it's going to be hot, but it's not going to be like here, Craig. I mean, Galicia cools down a little bit, I think.
That's true.
In the evening. But having said that, places like Orense in recent years have been getting the highest temperatures in the whole of Spain. So you could be really unlucky and be absolutely boiled in Galicia in the summer if you are unlucky and hit a heat wave.
Yeah, I think May, maybe early June might be a good time to go. But in July, in the last 2 weeks of July, Santiago de Compostela celebrates its biggest festival of the year. So you might be interested in going then. It's called the St. James Festival or the Apostle Festival. Festas do Apostolo, I think. How was my pronunciation? Was that okay?
I don't know, because that's not Spanish. That looks like Gallego. That's Galician language.
So that's the local name for the festival.
Yeah, Festas do Apostolo. Yeah, I'd say that's Gallego.
But why do people do it? We've mentioned the religious significance. Obviously, if you are a religious person, that is incentive and motivation to do the pilgrimage. But it's also a physical and a spiritual journey. So we mentioned it could be between 100 and 800 kilometers. That will burn off the calories of the chocolate that I've been eating for sure. But it's also a spiritual journey. And is walking the only way to do it, Reza?
No, you could walk, but you could also cycle. Lots of people do. Or a more old-fashioned, a more romantic way, do it on horseback. Ride a horse along the Camino. And you don't have to start right at the beginning and go to the end. People start at different points of the route. As Craig said, it's between 100 to 800 kilometers, so you make it as long as you like. But you are going to be tired, even if you do go on horseback. So tiredness, fatigue, that's going to be your main physical problem. But I have a funny feeling, particularly if you walk, you may well encounter blisters on your feet. That's whenever you've walked a lot. So you damage your feet and you get like a little sack of liquid, of pus, because of all the walking. I imagine quite a few people suffer from blisters because of the walk.
Yeah, if you've ever walked a long way in a new pair of shoes, then you probably have felt what a blister is. They're quite painful. So it's a good idea to do some short walks before you attempt to walk the way. So make sure you practice, make sure you train for it, especially if you're not used to walking long distances.
Yes, ladies, I wouldn't wear high heels if I were you for 800 kilometers. No, definitely we don't want high heels. We want flat shoes or boots or something like that.
But it's a beautiful, beautiful journey. Maybe not all of the route, because there are some parts where you're walking alongside or next to busy roads. So you have to take that into account. But some of the areas you walk through are really quite impressive. Diverse landscapes. There's lush forests. If a forest is lush, it's very green. It's very rich in vegetation, lots of plants to see. Rolling hills that are very nice to look at, very attractive to the eye. And beautiful picturesque villages and historic towns that you walk through. So it's a real cultural experience and a nature experience too. You'll be walking through the towns, you'll be stopping for tapas and lunch and eating some of the local food and cuisine. And of course, you have the opportunity to learn about the history of the region that you're walking through. So for people who don't know this part of Spain, especially if you're considering coming from another country, coming from abroad, you really do learn a lot about the area, especially because you're walking slowly and you have time to take it in, to appreciate what you're experiencing.
Yes, Craig's already mentioned the cuisine, but I would just like to add that if it hasn't changed, the last time I was in Santiago, it was a while ago. It was about 20 odd years ago, but it was one of the best places to eat in Spain, maybe Europe. So apart from being very, very beautiful, you also eat really well in Santiago. It's a great place for foodies.
And you don't have to worry how much you eat because you'll be walking the calories off during the day. Perfect. Now, as a pilgrim, as you're walking, and even if you're not religious, you'll probably be called a pilgrim because you're walking the way of St. James, you get something called a credential, which is stamped at various stops along the way. So it's kind of like an informal, unofficial passport, a little booklet that you get. And as you pass various points, various stops, you get this stamp that will let you go inside and sleep in particular hostels and other facilities. And some of them are free, aren't they?
Yes, there are a few hostels which are free, and even the ones we have to pay, they tend to be quite cheap because they're catering to people who just want a bed for the night, people who are really tired and they're going to go out like a log. That means they're going to fall asleep really quick. They're going to eat a lot, probably, and then fall asleep.
But to get that reduced price or even free accommodation, you do need that stamped booklet to show that you are actually walking. You can't just drive your car somewhere and sleep for free. You have to be walking the pilgrim's way.
Yes, and don't be tempted, please, anybody. Don't be tempted to somehow get a false credential and stamp it, because I have a funny feeling you won't be fooling God. He tends to find things out. And after all, it is a pilgrimage in the name of God, so it wouldn't really be in the spirit of things, would it?
No, the eye in the sky knows everything, so don't try and do that. But it is a journey of spiritual reflection, and many pilgrims do this walk for personal reasons, for spiritual reasons. They're maybe looking for self-discovery and reflection while they're on the trail and walking the journey. But apart from that, I think it's also really, really good if you want to practice your English, because you'll be meeting people as you're walking. And I don't know, Reza, if you've ever done this, but when you walk in the countryside in company with people, really there isn't much to do except look at the scenery, enjoy the nature, and speak to people around you. So it's a wonderful time to just walk and speak. And because many tourists do come to Spain, especially to do St. James's Way, there are many English speakers along the way that you can meet and socialize with and talk to as you're walking, as you're eating and doing the journey.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but it's probably one of the best places you could get to practice your English. And if you find yourself, a little bit tired, but there may be the odd hour or two when you don't want to speak to anybody, bring your smartphone with you and listen to a couple of episodes of the podcast.
Well, you could do that, but maybe I'd suggest not bringing your smartphone. Maybe this is the perfect time to leave your smartphone at home or turn it off. Now, this symbol that is significant of the Camino is in the shape of a scallop. And a scallop shell, if you're a Spanish speaker, is vieira. That's the shape of the shell. And you see this symbol, this shell, seashell shape, as you're walking along, because this shape marks the route, the way you're walking, and it's also a sign of the pilgrimage. And you might see this, you probably will see this shell shape on the backs of people's rucksacks or on their clothes as they're walking. So first of all, it shows you the way you should be walking. It signposts your way. And also you can identify people who are doing the Camino de Santiago because they'll have this shell scallop on their clothing or on their bags.
As Craig said right at the beginning, the Camino is not new at all. It goes back centuries, but it has experienced a notable resurgence in popularity recently. A resurgence is whenever something either disappeared or became very, very, very unpopular, or people forgot about it, but then it becomes popular again. So I think about 40, 50 years ago, not that many people really had heard of the way outside of Spain. But now there's nobody in Spain and probably not many people in Europe who haven't heard of it. So it really has drawn in a lot of people from all ages and all backgrounds, not just for the religious reasons, but just for the sense of adventure. And people, as Craig said, they like to walk to discover themselves. It gives you time to reflect, to find out who you are and how you relate to other people. That's why it's a great idea to practice your English, to get to know other people and build up that sense of community.
Absolutely. And the old town of Santiago de Compostela, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So this further emphasizes the historical and the cultural significance of the pilgrimage. Now, the pilgrims traditionally finish their journey by going to the Pilgrim's Mass. And the Mass, the religious ceremony, is at the Santiago de Compostela Cathedral. And that's where the pilgrims pay homage, give respect, they worship St. James. Now, as I mentioned before, there are links to maps and more information about St. James's Way on the website. Again, go to inglespodcast.com/492 if you're interested in discovering more information. And I also recommend a film that I saw about the way, which really explains what it's like so you can see for yourself what happens. Now, it's not the best film I've seen, let's be honest. It stars Martin Sheen, an American actor who's pretty good. The film is watchable, it's okay, but I definitely recommend it if you're considering doing the pilgrimage, doing the walk, and you just want to get an idea of what happens as you do it.
Okay, now it's your turn to practice, listeners. Maybe you have a comment. I'm sure there must be plenty of you who have actually done the way. Or even if you haven't done the way, I bet you visited Santiago because, like me, you might want to go there simply because it's a beautiful city, even if you don't actually go as a pilgrim. Let us know about your experiences. Send us a voice message, please. Have a look at the link in the notes. You can record yourself and send it to speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. We'd love to hear from anybody who has done or who is thinking of doing the way.
Yes, we would really appreciate your opinion, whether it's good or bad, and tell us about your experience. If you prefer to contact us by email, you can send emails, questions and comments to me, Craig, Craig, at inglespodcast.com. And to write to Reza, send your emails to belfastreza, that's REZA, at gmail.com.
This podcast is sponsored in part by mansioningles.com. Why don't you have a look at the online store where you can find many useful resources to further improve your English? There's a link in the show notes. Have a look at store, that's store.mansioningles.net.
And before we say goodbye and go out the door this week, we'd like to thank all of our lovely Patreon supporters. Now, why do people join our Patreon program? Well, first of all, you'd be supporting us and encouraging us to make more episodes of the podcast. And also, for as little as $1.50 per month, you also get instant access to transcriptions of this podcast so that you can read as you listen and see every word that we say. For more information, go to Patreon, patreon.com/Ingles podcast.
We'd like to say thank you to every single supporter personally and name them all, but we don't have time because the list is quite long. So what we normally do is say thanks to the most recent supporters who've just joined us this month. They are Maria Rosario, Erisbel Marquez, Teresa Gilde Biedma, Esteban, Silvia, Miguel Lopez Costea, Lucia Gonzalez, and Dancho. A big thank you to you and indeed all of our supporters from Patreon.
Yes, thank you very, very much. Now, in next week's episode, we're going to be speaking about book and author recommendations for you. So if you are interested in reading in English but you're not sure where to start, or maybe you read regularly but you need some recommendations because you can't think what book to read next, join us next week and we'll give you some ideas. Until next time, have a wonderful week. Thank you for listening this week. It's goodbye from Reza.
And it's goodbye from Craig.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.